Good morning, guys, and welcome to another episode of How to Build a Strawbale House. In the last episode, we made the tough decision that we're going to have to put off building the actual strawbale walls until the end of the monsoon season, which is somewhere around the end of September. It's just not going to be practical to start constructing with straw with the threat of having monsoon storms coming. But there's a lot of work to do. And what we're going to do today is we're going to begin tackling the first job, which is water lines. We've determined that having water right at the build site is going to be very beneficial for a couple reasons. One, we got to get water down to the house anyway. And two, having water right at the build site is going to be making our earthen plaster and cleaning up after our earthen plaster a whole lot easier, as opposed to having to haul water from 50 or 100 feet away. So you may have noticed that we have sticks lying around everywhere. And the reason being is that Yvonne makes beautiful macrame tapestries and wall hangings. She's got an Etsy store, and she also has an Instagram page called Mesquite and Macrame. Check it out. I'll leave a link for it in the description below. So let's get started with the water lines. Since we have the monsoon season coming up, we've decided to forego the building of the actual strawbale walls until the monsoon season is over. But what we're going to do is get a lot of mechanicals taken care of, including trenching a water line. We are about 150 feet away down to the platform where the house is going to be built. So now I've got to measure this out, see how many sticks I need, and I can get some materials. Okay, I just got back from the supply house, and I managed to score 7 20-foot long sticks of 1.5 inch Schedule 40 PVC with the bell on the end, and that saves me the time and trouble and cost of buying additional couplings. Plus the 20-footers just make more sense when you're going to do a run of 130 feet. A lot easier to deal with. But I was able to get all the fittings I need and the sticks that I need. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a string from our water box that I showed you in the previous clip, right back over there, down to the house over there. And I'm going to mark it with my marking paint, and then once it starts to get a little cooler, I'm going to start trenching. And one thing I did want to make sure to do is to mark where I trenched for our solar lines. This is where the PV lines were trenched, and they will intersect right here. So I have to be careful when I'm trenching here as to not to disturb the solar lines. That would be a disaster. So you can see how sandy our soil is. So what I've done is just kind of started the trench to establish the location better, And I got up to this point where our solar lines cross. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab Yvonne's watering can, and I'm going to start wetting this down. And that'll help me dig the trench deeper, hopefully without the walls collapsing on themselves. It will work. I've used this method before. Day 1 of trenching in the books. I'm going to get started tomorrow morning, probably around 5:30. It'll be daylight, but nice and cool. Be a little bit easier. I'd say I got probably 20 feet done, and I'm down between 18 and 20 inches. I came out last night and dug another 8 feet or so, and I managed to expose the conduit with the PV wires in it. So that's safely dug up and around. Today I have another 60 or 70 feet, and I'll be at the water line. So it's about 8:30. I've been trenching for about 3 hours, and I hit a patch with a lot of rock and actually a lot of roots from trees, mesquite trees that I had taken down when we first moved here. So it's been slow going, and I think I'm going to take a break now and pick this up later this afternoon when it starts to cool down again. I'm about halfway done. This may look organized, but believe me, it's not. I made a trip to the hardware store this morning, and I still forgot something. So we'll be able to get the installation going so that we can turn the water back on to the trailer, but the hose bib will not be successfully hooked up today. So here's what we got going. The 1.5 inch water line will come into here. It then converts down to 3/4 inch PEX. It's going to tee off here, going over to the side wall with a 3/4 inch PEX ball valve. Another piece of PEX going up, and then over to a 6-inch piece of galvanized, 3/4 inch galvanized pipe. This is going to actually penetrate the 2x10 rim joist. And then on the outside, we'll have then this faucet, somewhat like that, attached to the rim joist. So what I'm missing, of course, is a female adapter here down to PEX, and I need another male adapter here going to PEX. Then this will then go, eventually will elbow up and go over to our hot water heater, and this will be the beginning of the supply line for the house. Okay, Yvonne is trenching out to make the final connection, or I should say the first connection to our main water line. You can see the 1.5 inch PVC coming out of our valve box right there. And once this is cleared out, what we're going to do is we're going to mark and we're going to cut that 1.5 inch PVC and put a T in, and we're going to tee off down to this new trench. So we're going to cut into this supply line and tee off heading down to the new trench. I want to make sure that this 1.5 inch pipe reaches as far as possible inside this fitting. There's a shoulder on either side that you want to get the pipe as close to as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that width inside, and if I cut 2 inches out from here, measure 2 inches and cut it out, I should give myself enough room to be able to get that in. So I made this yesterday just because you're always going to want your primer and your glue together. And when they're individual cans, they tend to tip over. This gives it some stability and makes sure that everything stays together. I did make a little video about how I put that together, and I'll post that soon. The tail end of the water line, the main feed, and what we're going to do is we're going to trench out to a gentle slope, bringing it up to a little bit higher level. And then we're going to position our valve box and get that set. We had a little bit of an issue up at the valve box where we made our first connection. What happened was when I cut out for that T, I couldn't fit the T in. Luckily, there was a union right there at the water meter. So I was able to take the union apart and get that T put in and reconnect the union. So here's what it looks like now. So we have our water meter teed out, elbow down to the house. I've just assembled the valve connections, and what we have is the main water line will feed into this. Here it's going to tee off and go to a hose bib on the side of the house, and this valve will be the main valve for the house itself. Do a slight modification to our valve box because we have the water line coming in here, and then we are teeing out to that silcock or hose bib on the side. So we're going to be using 3/4 inch PEX, so I'm going to drill 1 1/4 inch hole right there. I just clamped some blocking on the back to give it some stability while I drill. We just set the valve box. We have an access port here for the hose bib. And let me see if I can show you what's going on in here. We have our two shut-off valves. Feed line comes in from here. The first orange handle is the shut-off valve for the hose bib. The second blue handle is going to be the shut-off for the house. So we checked it with a level. It ain't perfect, but it's close enough. And we're going to put a lid on it and backfill. Okay, it's been about an hour or so since we did all the gluing, and we're turning on the water and checking for leaks. And what I did was I opened the main valve very slowly, and it's only about 1/4 open. I'm letting all this pipe fill up under gentle pressure because we do get about 100 psi coming in from our well. So we're just taking it easy, and I don't see any leaks thus far. Everything looks nice and dry, but we're going to open this up now to full pressure, and we're going to just observe this probably until tomorrow and make sure that nothing's leaking before we backfill, because the last thing we want to do is have to dig this up and find the leak to repair. After 24 hours, everything seemed fine. And then I went back and checked with my hand. I had paper towels laying underneath the joints and everything was dry. But I went back and ran my fingers around the joints, and I found a weeping leak. Very, very minor. It wasn't even dripping on the ground, but I could feel the moisture with my hands. So what I did was I cut out about a 4-foot piece of this 1.5 inch PVC that was leading up to the valves, because I figured what's happening is the 1.5 inch PVC wasn't handling this upslope very well. So I cut it back and I made a PEX connection, 3/4 inch PEX connection a little further back, and now the flexibility of the PEX will handle that slight upslope, hopefully a lot better. Before I cover this up, I want to put in some extra support underneath certain critical points, and I'll just use some flat rocks to do that.